As the sun sets, the year comes to its end, and as the year departs, it takes with it all its blessings and its curses and deposits them in the great memory of the universe. And in the following breath, another year begins. But before we fully engage with the new year that comes, we pause, we suspend the flow of time, and we enter a holy bubble in time. Inside the bubble of these high holidays, we take a deep breath, a deep and honest look at ourselves. Who am I? Where am I in my life? In my relationships, in my community, in my service and my work? What did I do with my time, with my life? Where is our world, and what difference has my being alive in the world made? We ask some version of these questions each year. We asked these questions last year and the year before that. And most of us have a deep feeling that we haven't changed nearly enough. Not us, and not our world. Each Rosh Hashanah, we hope that this will be the year. That this will be the year when we finally change and accomplish that which we have wanted to accomplish and fulfill the dreams that have been postponed from one year to the next. We dread the thought that next year we'll be in the same place, lamenting the same state of affairs. And yet in our collective lives, beside the pandemic which has sapped our energy and concern for the last 18 months, just look at the issues we are dealing with day in and day out. Climate change with weather such as we have just experienced, ever more violent and more extreme, with deadly fires and deadly floods, inequality, poverty, racism, anti-Semitism, polarization, the decay of democracy, of liberalism, of humanism. We all understand the heaviness and gravity of these issues, and I believe we all feel quite troubled and overwhelmed. In a recent conversation, my dear and wise friend Rabbi Erwin Kula told me, "Don't you see that we are stuck in a worldview that is eating us and destroying us? Our worldview, that science, reason, markets, individualism, property rights define reality and exhaust how we make sense of things, is not working. It has reduced us to isolated, self-interested consumers who are takers and users of the world. Unless we collectively create and internalize a different worldview, nothing will change. Our worldview controls us and determines our lives. But we can't see it because it is the water we swim in," he said. Remember the famous parable? Two young fish are swimming along and they encounter an older fish swimming the other way who nods at them and says, "Good morning, how's the water?" And the two young fish keep swimming, and then eventually one of them turns to the other and asks, "What the hell is water?" We don't see the water we are swimming in, but we know that the way most of us live is literally consuming us, physically, spiritually, and morally. We know that we desperately need to change, but nothing will meaningfully and substantially change unless we determine ourselves to see the water in which we swim, unless we become aware of how dangerous and destructive our present worldview has become. To change our worldview means that we have to let go of the way we think, our lifestyle, our comfort, our habits, our economic system, our certainties, and the rigidity of our ideological positions, our sense of ownership, and our grip on power. And that is really difficult. Just change in general is hard for most of us. To think about letting go of the things we are so deeply committed and attached to, the way we think and the way we live, and forging a new way sounds like a formidable and daunting challenge. We know our lives are off and our world is off, but we can't contemplate letting go and giving up on how we live. The water we are swimming in is polluted, but it is the only water we know how to swim in. So we need to pause, to suspend the ceaseless flow in which we are trapped, to come to a standstill in order to reflect, to detach, to reassess, to disrupt. One of the most radical and disruptive ideas of our ancient Jewish wisdom is the practice of the sabbatical year, the year of shemitah, or in English, the year of release. Our tradition mandates that every 7 years we are to stop the ordinary flow of our lives for an entire year. 7 in our tradition calls for pausing and transforming. The 7th day, the Shabbat, is our holy day of rest, a sanctuary in time in which we shift from having to being, from owning to giving, from controlling to sharing, from subduing to being in accord, as Rabbi Abraham Joshua Heschel put it. The 7th month, this month of Tishrei and the holidays of Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, in which we pause to do the transformative work of soul-searching and teshuvah, culminating with the joy of Sukkot. The 7th year, the sabbatical year of Shemitah, a whole year of release. And after 7 cycles of 7 years, on the 50th year comes the Jubilee year, Shnat HaYovel, as a major reset. I am happy to proclaim that the year 5782 we have just entered is a sabbatical Shemitah year, and that it presents us with a great opportunity to practice the release we so desperately need for the sake of personal and social transformation. Every 7th year, the Torah says, all agricultural work stops. The land and its produce become ownerless, a periodic reminder that ultimately the land belongs to God, and we are just sojourners in this world. In the 7th year, the poor and the needy may enter into what was previously private land and may eat freely, the animals as well. Rich and poor all share equally the fruit of the land. Every 7th year, for one entire year, equality reigns in a temporarily revolutionary, ideal society where there are no owners and no tenants, no rich and no poor, no donors and no recipients. Every 7th year, all debits are canceled. And the Torah warns lenders not to withhold loans for fear of not being able to collect the debt once the 7th year comes. Lending to the needy is an obligation of those who have more. 6 years you shall sow your land and gather in its produce, but in the 7th year you shall let it rest and life fallow, says the Torah in the book of Exodus. Let the needy among your people eat of it, and what they leave, let the wild beasts eat. You shall do the same with your vineyards and your olive groves. And in Leviticus, when you enter the land that I am giving you, the land shall cease and observe a Shabbat of Adonai. For 6 years you may sow your field, and 6 years you may prune your vineyard and gather in the yield. But in the 7th year, the land shall have a Shabbat of complete rest, a Shabbat of Adonai. You shall not sow your field or prune your vineyard. You shall not reap the aftergrowth of your harvest or gather the grapes of your untrimmed vines. It shall be a year of complete rest for the land. But you may eat whatever the land during its Shabbat will produce. Your male and female slaves, the hired and bound laborers who live with you, and your cattle and the beasts in your land may eat all its yield. And finally, in the book of Deuteronomy, at the end of 7 years, you shall make a shemitah, a release. This is the matter of the release. Every creditor shall remit the due that he claims from his fellow. He shall not request debt payment from his fellow or his brother, for the release of Adonai has been proclaimed. When there is among you a needy person from any one of your brothers or sisters within one of your gates, in the land that Adonai your God is giving you, you shall not harden your heart. You're not to shut your hand to your brother or sister, the needy one. Rather, you must open your hand and lend them sufficient for whatever they need. You might be thinking right now, what does a sabbatical year referred in these biblical texts have to do with us? These laws were surely meant for an ancient agricultural society. Nothing could be farther from our reality today. Yet, the idea of the sabbatical shemitah year presents us with a great opportunity to pause, to release, and to rebuild our worldview. The sabbatical shemitah year holds the Jewish aspiration towards a higher ethics and morality as a path forward toward a more just, kind, beautiful, and sustainable world. Rabbi Abraham Isaac Kook, the first chief rabbi of Jewish Palestine during the British Mandate, wrote in 1910 in his book Shabbat Haaretz, Shabbat of the Land, the forcefulness that is inevitably part of our regular public lives lessens our moral refinement. There is always a tension between the ideal of listening to the voice inside us that calls us to be kind, truthful, and merciful, and the conflict, compulsion, and pressure to be unyielding that surround buying, selling, and acquiring things. These aspects of the world of action distance us from the divine light and prevent its being discerned in the public life of the nation. This distancing also permeates the morality of individuals like poison. Stilling the tumult of social life from time to time in certain predictable ways is meant to move this nation, when it is well ordered, to rise toward an encounter with the heights of its other inner moral and spiritual life. They touch the divine qualities inside them and that transcend all the stratagems of the social order and that cultivate and elevate our social arrangements, bringing them toward perfection. The leading Jewish environmental organization, Chazon, has challenged the Jewish community here in Israel and around the world to rediscover the meaning of Shemitah for today and to creatively adapt the core values and principles of this tradition to create healthier, more sustainable, and resilient Jewish communities in a better world. The following paragraph is from Chazon's Shemitah sourcebook. We now stand in an age of global connectivity, in an age of interfaith sharing, in an age of diversified, multi-layered international Judaism. While Shemitah may not define us as a Jewish people or be on our highest cultural priority list, a conversation and movement is growing to reclaim and reimagine Shemitah for our modern era. If Shemitah was a radical, challenging proposition back in early Israelite culture, how much more so today, in an era of industrial agriculture and the global marketplace. After all this time of dormancy, the time has come to once again explore this question of shemitah. And in doing so, let us meet this ancient tradition anew, ripe and fresh, to harvest her lessons for us today, and begin a conversation which will ripple into years to come, many generations ahead. So we pause this Shemitah year 5782 to reclaim our stewardship of the land and rediscover our interconnectedness with the land, with nature, and the environment. We pause the Shemitah year 5782 to think about our relationship to our food, to take a deeper look at what we eat, how we consume, and to ask ourselves, how much is enough? To open our eyes to how food has become so commodified as to leave millions and millions of our fellow human beings here and around the world suffering from hunger, malnutrition, and food insecurity. We pause the Shemitah year 5782 to regenerate the bonds of community, to reaffirm that a person's worth is measured by who we are and not by what we do or what we have, to reaffirm that everyone is worthy of being counted in and of occupying a dignified place in the human community. We pause the Shemitah year 5782 to explore the tension between the desire to preserve private property and the wish not to see property as the be-all and end-all, to explore how to endow our economic activity with a good measure of compassion and care, and establish a sense of economic fairness and equality. We pause this Shemitah year 5782 to look at the balance between our work and our leisure and family time. Most of us who work are overworked and feel often exhausted and burnt out, and we feel that our lives are neither healthy nor sustainable. Why we work so hard and find it challenging to pause and breathe is a complicated economical and spiritual issue, and we need to understand it and address it. Shemitah is a big and powerful, radical proposition that presents us with the opportunity to transform our worldview, the way we think and the way we live, our relationship to the natural world, to time, to one another, and to society at large. Throughout these Yamim Nora'im, we will be unfolding the ideas of Shemitah, and we will dedicate the entire year 5782 at BJ to learn about and practice Shemitah in multiple ways. We invite you all to join us on this special journey. As we enter these Yamim Nora'im and the sabbatical Shemitah year 5782, I fervently pray that we may seize the opportunity to pause, to reflect, to release what must be released, to imagine and to dream big, and to transform what must be transformed, so that all creation, we and the generations that follow, may live and enjoy God's blessing safely and freely and thrive and rise. Shana Tova.